Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside 60 Days, the after-show panel discussion that goes behind the scenes of the A&E TV show set in the Clark County Jail. That show is called 60 Days In, and it follows 7 innocent people who volunteered to go undercover as inmates in the jail for 2 months. We're halfway through season 1 now, and we're seeing how bonds between the undercovers and the inmates are growing stronger. Some are finding their footing while others start to lose themselves. Last night we also saw how a surprise visitor affects Zach, what happens when Tammy pays for the cake, and how one inmate stashes away his medication. To talk about that latest episode, I'm here with Jennifer Ortiz, a criminal justice professor at IUS, and Clark County Jail Commander Major Sam Beard. My name is Elizabeth DePompe, and I'm the public safety reporter for the News and Tribune. Thank you both for being here. Jennifer, welcome back. So last week we talked a bit about friendships in the jail and if those can be good friendships or healthy friendships. Your opinion, I think, was no, that they cannot be. Jennifer, in your experience in talking to people who are incarcerated, how important are those friendships and bonds that they develop?
I think for some people it's a matter of survival, especially those who don't have any outside help. So those who aren't able to get commissary will sometimes turn to other inmates for help. But I think that help comes at a cost, right? So I spoke to a lot of men who were either gang members when they entered or joined gangs once they entered a facility. And what happens is they became dependent on those gangs for commissary, right? But what happens is that comes at a cost. So once the gang leader provided them with commissary or items, they then basically had to do whatever it was that the gang leader wanted them to do. So I think for some people it's just a matter of survival.
Mm-hmm. Major Beard, you mentioned before a bit about Jeff and how he's handling it. He seems to be kind of latching on to Nash, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Is that a smart idea? Do you think he's doing something right?
No, he doesn't know anything about this guy. The best thing Jeff could have did was go in there, sit back like Isaiah did, observe everything, watch the movement for a while. But Jeff is sort of, and I'm going to say this, is a weak individual who has self-esteem issues. He was picked on in high school. And you got to understand, he didn't understand the environment he went into. In that environment, they take kindness for weakness.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a bit about Miriam because she's really taking on this maternal kind of role. She is a social worker in the real world outside the jail, and she seems to be taking on that role inside the jail. Do you think someone like Miriam can really make a difference for these inmates and really help them?
I think that she can help the inmates who want to be helped, which is what we see her doing with that young lady who's trying to get her GED. But that young lady already has a motivation. I feel like if they have the motivation inside of them, then someone like Miriam can help them. But I don't think she can go in, and I hope she doesn't think this, that she can go in and just save everyone, because you can't save everyone. You can only save those people who want to be saved.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, because I do wonder if some of the inmates are put off by kind of how positive and ambitious she is. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yes, because they want to be there, but they can't get there. And funny you said that lady's trying to get her GED. I was a little disturbed last night watching this show, and I have to watch it by myself. Mm-hmm. Barbara stated, there's nothing to do, there's this. And I brought with me, and I showed both of you the list of programs going on in the jail. We put lists up every time one of these programs start. And there's a lot of inmates that go, and there's a lot of inmates that we've got out in the last year that are successful. But you got to take the first step.
Mm-hmm. Hold that up for us so people can kind of see how
this is.
That kind of looks like.
And I would task anybody to find more programs in a jail in Indiana, Kentucky, anywhere close. There's just not.
And so how are the inmates told about the programs? How do they know?
Each time we have a program, like we just started 2 psychological programs, Living in Balance and Seeking Safety. Seeking Safety is for female inmates, and Living in Balance is for the males. We put lists up in the pod. Now, with these group settings, no more than 15, because it's got to be small, and the smaller the groups, the more the inmates will open up. But we put that out there for everybody. Now, of course, classification comes into play because you don't want a level 1, which is maximum security, in with a level 6. But they are afforded to all inmates.
And so if they see a program and schedule and they want to take advantage of that, how do they sign up? Do they tell a guard?
They sign up.
Okay.
We put lists up every time
Okay.
a new program begins.
Okay. Let me go to a viewer question because it's kind of on the same note and something Miriam brought up. Melanie on Twitter asked, I wonder why the inmates don't go outside and get fresh air and see sunlight. Major Beer, tell us about the rec time that these inmates get.
The rec time, again, it's on the program schedule. We try to give them rec twice a week. And you got to understand, the first series of these programs were really when Sheriff Knoll was just getting a foothold on the place. You understand, it come from a bad situation. The jail wasn't in good shape when Sheriff Knoll took over. So now we're to the point where we're giving recreation, and they pointed to the side where the door comes up and you can see outside. Mm-hmm. Back in the old jail, and I'm not going to get into war stories, we had a open area at the top of the jail that was just a chain link fence. I was a sergeant, they knocked out the camera, and two murderers got out and ran across the top of the building. Luckily, we caught both of them, but you got to remember we're in a secure facility. We got to keep security.
Mm-hmm. So in the episode we hear it's 1 hour once a week. Is that still true, or because you said twice a week?
It's twice a week.
Okay. And Jennifer, if you can talk about how important that can be for them to have that kind of time to get outside the pod and.
Well, I was actually surprised because the men who are in prison get yard every single day, so they are experiencing far more recreation time. Some of the men I spoke to spoke about being outside for 6 hours a day, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because they can let out aggression and they can be outside, but it's also the time when they're most likely to pass contraband between each other because a lot of them can be out of the eyesight of a correctional officer. So it poses, I think, safety and logistical issues for a facility, but then it can be good to get them outside and get them to get some of their aggression out. Mm-hmm. We also have to consider that a lot of the individuals I spoke to were in prisons that were in areas that had a much larger land area. So you can have a yard big enough for 1,000 inmates at one time, whereas Clark County is located in a situation in an area where they have less room and less ability, I think, to even have an outside area.
There's a difference between prisons and jails. I know both sides of the fence. And what you got to consider, the inmates in prison, that's their home. So there's not looser sanction, but they get more yard time and things like that, because if you have somebody convicted for say 50 years and you keep them in an area like the jail, you're going to end up in trouble. Most prisons I worked at had acres of land, so that affords them the ability to do more things.
Let me move on to Zach, another Twitter question. Why break, because he got a surprise visit from his wife. Why break the strict rules? That defeats the purpose of the equal social experiment. No other inmates get in-person visits. Did you all have that same reaction, or what did you think about Zach getting a visit?
Well, that's not the truth. We do have contact visits, and there are certain requirements you have to meet. Inmates can do that on a case-to-case basis. We have some inmates that lost their mother, lost a child, something of that. We allow them one-on-one visits, and I've sat in on them, and they can be pretty emotional. So Zach getting a visit is nothing out of the ordinary, and I believe it helped the program. You know, we got another person's view of how tough it is with your husband in prison, jail. So to say that's a one-time and special, no, it's not a special privilege. It is a privilege you have to earn.
Jennifer, how valuable do you think, because they did talk to Zach's wife after the visit, how valuable do you think that feedback could be? And have you also spoken to family members of people who are incarcerated?
So I think it was really valuable because no one's going to know if he's truly changed the way she will, because only she truly knows him. Everyone else gets to meet snapshots of Zach, right? They don't know his personality. Who knows him better than his wife? So I feel like the feedback was really valuable because she could have told Sheriff Knoll, I think he's having a breakdown. He's not himself. His personality's changed. This is not him. And that could have given some indication that maybe he needed to be pulled out. Mm-hmm. Her reassuring the sheriff that Zach is the same Zach, I think is a good thing. I have spoken to individuals who have people who are incarcerated. I also, in my family, have individuals who are incarcerated, and I think contact visits are great, but also I was actually pleasantly surprised when I heard about the video conferencing, because some families can't travel, right? So my grandmother traveled, 6 hours to visit her son inside of a facility in person. I can only imagine how much she would have loved to see him on video and not travel 6 hours in each direction to visit her son in prison. So I think it's two-sided. Contact visits are great, but the ease of video visitation, to me, I think is something we should consider everywhere.
And really at Clark County, I probably did one of the first contact visits. We had a guy sentenced to 104 years. He was never going to see his family again. He was a high-risk inmate, but the sheriff at that time thought, this guy's going to Michigan City. His family lives close. Let's afford him 15 minutes. And we have rules to contact visits, which if you watched, none of those rules. We allow them a hug and a kiss when they start, a hug and a kiss when they leave. They went exactly by the rules because Captain Maples worked in the jail. He knows what the rules are to those visits.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch to someone who's not an undercover inmate. He's actually an inmate at the jail. His name is Ricky, and it appears he gets daily or regular medication, and come to find out that he's hiding it in his mouth and then trading it or giving it to another inmate. One viewer asked on Twitter, how do the guards not notice when an inmate like Ricky is cracking, so to speak? He clearly has a psychotic break. It does appear that he kind of deteriorates. Again, it's hard to tell, with editing and how much time has really passed. But I had the same question, Major Beard. How did he get away with hiding the medication? What kind of check do guards do? And is somebody who's on regular medication being monitored by a doctor or seeing a doctor regularly?
Number one, the medical staff trains all pill call officers, and I'm in on that from a security aspect. I did pill call hundreds of times in Clark County, and what you have to do, you have to be focused on that, focused on pill call. You can't be thinking about, and I even tell my supervisors, when we have an officer doing pill call, don't call them on the radio. Don't say, are you about done? Don't pressure people that's handing out medication. And part of it is when they take the medication is they have to open their mouth and roll their tongue back. And we check that mouth. But you got to understand the inmate concept. When I do pill call, when I used to do pill call, they used to try to bring coffee or soda up there to take it with. But what you find out is when they act like they're drinking, they'll spit it down in that soda, and it's dark and you can't see it. So there was an officer that didn't do their job. But out of how many times a week we do pill call, they're liable to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's on psychotropic medication is kept up by counselors.
Jennifer, what did you think when you saw that happening?
Well, I think, to speak to the person's question, I think we have to be clear. Correctional staff are not medically trained, right? These are not psychologists. So how would they know what the signs of the break of whatever his condition happens to be? So I think it's unfair to say that officers should have known, right? They may start to see erratic behavior and be concerned with his behavior, but I don't think they'll be able to know that he's having a break. And I also think some of these pills are very tiny. It's easy to stick it between your gum and your cheek, right? So they have to open their mouth and roll their tongue, but it's not that hard to hide a pill inside of your mouth.
Yeah.
Can I add something
Sure.
to that? Since last year when we first started, we've limited the kind of medication that we pass out. Now, I don't say we don't do stuff like hydrocodone. I will never make that statement. But we let the doctor determine that, and hydrocodone or anything that have that opiate effect, we limited, they get hydrocodone for a week. If they're still in pain, we address the underlying issue. Our medical department has changed for the better. So this guy that took that pill, number one, he didn't know what he's taking, and he's telling you he's getting high, but how high did he get? you know, and I've never been an addict, so I don't understand. I really like working with y'all, but I don't know if you spit a pill out if I'd take it.
That's fair.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, there's so much more to talk about, but as always, there's not enough time. I do want to ask, though, I was surprised to see that there was a hair trimmer in the female pod. They were having like a salon day. I mean, couldn't they use that? Couldn't they break that apart and use that for something? And is that allowed in the male pods?
Well, we have to do haircuts, and we used to have a barber come in, and you $10 to get a haircut. Now, if you're indigent, we have to provide by the state jail standards a haircut every 6 weeks. But we've used trimmers, and they're checked before they go in. They're checked and deliced when they come out.
Okay.
So it's pretty sanitary, and the morale goes up.
Has there ever been a safety issue
No.
with it? Okay. All right, very good. What are you all looking forward to next week?
Well, I'm looking forward to we see Zach and Isaiah being taken out of one pod and moved to another pod. It's going to be interesting to see Zach's become very comfortable in his pod. Yeah. What happens when he's transferred somewhere else? It's going to be interesting to see Robert come back out of solitary. For all his brave talk, he looked very scared when Maples told him that he was going back to general population. And I'll be interested to see what happens to Tammy, because she seems to me like she is really losing it. And I was least worried about her, and now I feel like we should have been perhaps most worried about her.
Yeah. Major Beard?
Again, with Tammy, I think Barbara did a better job at first of just sitting there. I think Barbara was a little depressed, but she got more comfortable as time went on. Tammy went in there with this attitude. And when you go into an environment like that, if you go in too aggressive, it's going to distance you from people. I'm going to see what happens to Jeff and all his caring and giving. I don't think it's going to turn out well. I'm not really worried about Zach and Isaiah. Zach's a Marine. I think he'll adapt, and Isaiah, he'll be his usual self, quiet. He was almost ready to check out of the program, but after he talked to his mother, he got himself together and he made some acquaintances.
Yep, very good. Well, thank you both. The next episode of 60 Days In airs on A&E Thursday at 10 p.m. And that's it for this episode of Inside 60 Days. For more of our 60 Days In coverage, go to newsandtribune.com/inside60days. To ask our panelists your own questions, tweet at News and Tribune with the hashtag Inside 60 Days. And if you've had your own experience in the Clark County Jail and want to share your story, email me at elizabeth.depompe@newsandtribune.com. Thank you to our panelists and to the Jeffersonville High School students that help us every week. And thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.